What's going on, everybody? Tuesday marks the start of Detroit Lions Hard Knocks.
Hello, Motor City. Grit. And what does it mean? We'll go a little bit longer, we'll push a little harder, and we'll think a little deeper and a little sharper. It means we're unbreakable. We are freaking starving. We are starving.
Every single year, HBO's Hard Knocks gives us an inside look at the training camp and preseason for one of the up-and-coming teams. And this year, it's Dan Campbell's Detroit Lions. Between Campbell and Jamal Williams being mic'd up, this is going to be must-watch television. And for us fantasy football players, we usually like to watch Hard Knocks to give us an inside look and a closer look at some of the players, in practice, off the field, and see who's going to be valuable for fantasy football. And while the Detroit Lions may not win a Super Bowl this year, they probably won't even win the division, I think they have quite a bit of players that are going to be relevant for fantasy football. So in this video, we're going over the players that you need to keep an eye on for fantasy football. And let's start with Jared Goff. Now, Jared Goff, obviously the quarterback, often criticized. I've certainly criticized him quite a bit. He's probably not going to be a starter for most fantasy leagues, right? However, I think he's going to be a very relevant bye-week option. I think the Detroit Lions schedule is extremely easy, so there's going to be quite a bit of good matchups for him. And in 2 quarterback leagues, he actually does have starter value there. After Dan Campbell took over the offensive play calling duties last year, the team actually started to move the ball and score a little bit. From weeks 12 to 15 last year, Jared Goff was actually quarterback 8 for fantasy. Now, he had more games than a few other people, I get that. However, from week 12 on, that's 5 weeks because he was injured for a couple of them. He had multiple touchdowns in, it looks like 4 of those 5 games. He threw just 2 interceptions during that time. Jared Goff could be pretty good, and we'll go over the pass catchers on this team, but don't look now, but the Lions actually have a talented receiving core. Let's get into the running backs first, though. The first one's Deandre Swift. Swift is probably the most sought-after fantasy option on the Lions, and his big thing is he hasn't been able to stay healthy. The Lions actually have come out and said that they are going to manage his workload a little bit in training camp. Hard Knocks seems like a great opportunity to take a look at this managed workload and see what we're actually talking about. But Deandre Swift, very clearly one of the best dual threats in the game. He is going to be an RB1 for somebody. And it's going to be nice to take a look at this backfield because the other guy, Jamal Williams, do not be surprised when he steals the show during Hard Knocks. Do not be surprised when he steals too many snaps during the Detroit Lions season as well. Jamal Williams, off the field, he is a character, loves anime, just a total goofball, you know what I mean? Like, he's an awesome locker room guy. He's going to be awesome in front of the camera.
Who do you think I am?
You're 27.
Oh, good guess. Oh, you're actually right.
Actually?
Yeah, you did. You got it right. How can you tell? I ain't got no facial hair. I look like a little kid, don't I? No, it's because of the muscles. Yeah? Yeah, I bet. Nice to meet you, brother. What's your name?
Josh.
I'm Jamal, man.
I know Jamal.
Well, thank you. I still got to introduce myself, Josh.
Yeah.
That's what regular people do.
He's also awesome on the football field. He runs hard, he runs routes like a wide receiver, and he's one of the best pass protectors in the game. Because of that, he's going to see snaps whether you like it or not, and he is way undervalued for fantasy football right now. However, I don't think he's going to be undervalued by the Hard Knocks crew. Now we get into this receiving core we were talking about. We will start with Amon-Ra St. Brown. The second-year wide receiver is going the earliest out of the wide receivers here, and there's high expectations for him. He looked good last season. Over the final 6 weeks of the season, he totaled 51 receptions for 560 yards and 5 receiving touchdowns. He's very clearly going to be a big part of the Lions' offense. However, is he being overvalued a little bit? I tend to think so. However, we will get a better look during Hard Knocks this year. One of the reasons why I think Amon-Ra St. Brown might be a little bit overvalued is because I think this next guy is a little bit undervalued. DJ Chark is a stud. DJ Chark was limited to just 4 games last year because of the injury. He is one of the more undervalued, under the radar signings, I think, of the offseason. This is a guy who's a couple seasons removed from a 1,000-yard year in Jacksonville. I think he had 700 and something yards the year after that. And he's 25 years old. He's another one of these really talented young receivers for the Detroit Lions. And, you know, if we're looking at building a team, I think the Lions are doing a really good job. I think DJ Chark's a really good player. And it'll be interesting to see how everything shakes out on this offense. The Lions also used a high draft pick on a wide receiver. That's Jameson Williams, who could be the most talented wide receiver drafted this year. He's coming off a knee injury, so he's not practicing in full. There were talks about him being ahead of schedule. He thought he could actually practice at the start of training camp. Dan Campbell and other people sort of pumped the brakes on that a little bit, trying to make sure he is fully ready to practice. Because, you know, if there's one thing I know, the Lions are going to practice hard, and they definitely don't want any setbacks with Jameson Williams. But when he is healthy, it would not be surprising to see him solidify himself as the wide receiver one. He is uber talented, can do pretty much everything. And it'll be interesting to see in Hard Knocks where he's at in his rehab, how much, you know, camera time he gets. And, you know, at some point he may be able to give it a full go in practice, and we may see that on the big screen. And if that's the case, Jameson Williams could be an absolute steal for fantasy football this season.
We're going to kick you in the teeth, and when you punch us back, we're going to smile at you, and when you knock us down, we're going to get up, and on the way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off, and we're going to stand up, and then it's going to take 2 more shots to knock us down, and on the way up, we're going to take your other kneecap, and we're going to get up, and then it's going to take 3 shots to get us down, and when we do, we're going to take another hunk out of you. Before long, we're going to be the last one standing.
Okay, let's talk about a couple other young wide receivers here that may be less useful for fantasy football, but they certainly have roles on this football team. The first being Josh Reynolds. Josh Reynolds was obviously on the team last season. He came from the Rams. He has that little bit of chemistry with Jared Goff built in. And, oh, by the way, Dan Campbell loves this dude. And how do I know that? He's got 3 nicknames for him, which I can only assume means big things in Dan Campbell's world. He calls Josh Reynolds the praying mantis, the spider of death, and he called him a freaking serpent. What's that mean for fantasy football? I don't know, but I think he can man the slot a little bit there. I think he's going to be useful, probably more useful in real life than for fantasy football. But obviously, if injuries happen, he's more than capable of stepping up. We saw him do good things last year and the year before with the Rams as well. He went on a 5-week stretch last season where he totaled 295 yards and 2 touchdowns. Could that be replicable? Maybe. Probably not, given the rest of the talent in this receiving core. But again, if injuries happen and opportunities arise, I think Josh Reynolds is more than capable of stepping up. Last wide receiver we'll talk about is Quintes Cephas, former Wisconsin Badger. Big, extremely strong, athletic wide receiver. And, you know, again, I think he's going to be extremely inconsistent for fantasy, right? But I think he could have a consistent role on this team. He is a good blocker on the outside. I think if he can improve even more as a blocker, he's going to be useful in this hard-nosed, attacking the Lions offense. And if he's a good blocker, if he is a big red zone threat, then I think he has built-in snaps. If you have built-in snaps, that means you have built-in opportunity. Opportunity leads to productivity in fantasy football. I don't know how many times I need to say that, but Quintes Cephas, tons of highlights from this guy. Let's see if he can do it in the regular season. He's certainly a person to keep your eye on. Okay. Tight ends are the last 2 people I'm going to talk about here. The first being TJ Hawkinson. TJ Hawkinson's an absolute dog. He's super good. We all know that. He's one of the top fantasy options. I think he's going as the 7th tight end off the board right now, which for my money is a little bit undervalued. And we'll see how good he is during Lions training camp, on Hard Knocks, in the preseason, etc., etc. But I think people forget how good he was to start the season last year. Through the first 8 weeks of the season, he caught 48 of his 64 targets for 448 yards and 2 touchdowns. This was good for tight end 3 in PPR. If TJ Hockenson stays healthy, I don't think there's any doubt he's a top 5 tight end in the game. So certainly undervalued for fantasy football in my opinion, and we could see his stock rise during Hard Knocks. This last player probably not going to be relevant. He's going to have to fight to make the team, but I think he is certainly an interesting story to watch during Lions Hard Knocks. That's Devin Funchess. Yes, that Devin Funchess. Devin Funchess has transitioned back to playing tight end like he did a little bit in college at Michigan. Dan Campbell loves his tight ends. Dan Campbell, former tight end coach. Maybe he can figure something out in Devin Funchess. Again, he certainly has to stay healthy to make the team. He couldn't do that in Green Bay, obviously. But I think it's within the realm of possibility that Devin Funchess becomes a capable receiving tight end for the Lions. Is it likely? Probably not, but it's certainly within the realm of possibility, and it's a situation to watch during Lions training camp. Okay, so those are the players to watch for fantasy football during Detroit Lions Hard Knocks. Obviously, the main story you will want to watch is Dan Campbell. He is going to be absolutely electric. We know Jamal Williams is going to be electric. This is going to be must-watch TV. We will probably have reactions to Hard Knocks here on this channel, so definitely subscribe. Comment who you're most excited to watch during Hard Knocks this year. Also comment below fantasy football topics that you want to see future videos of. Make sure to set an alarm to watch Hard Knocks Tuesday night, and we will be here to react to it, possibly Tuesday night, maybe Wednesday morning. See you then.